friends, welcome back to Eric Nevins Live. I'm so grateful that you're here. This is going to be a fantastic conversation. I've been looking forward to it for months. So you get to be here. A reminder, this is a conversation not just between me and our guest, who I'm going to introduce you to in just a second, but also you. So you get to add a question. We're going to have a question of the day here in a minute, but you get to add something. If maybe you're asking some questions, let me tell you, most of my friends on social media, I guarantee you're going to have a question or two for our guests. So feel free to throw that wherever you are. Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. Just leave your question right in the comments where you see this video, and we'll be able to, I'll see it and I'll put it up. We'll answer with those in a little bit. If you'd like to, we'd love to have you go follow us on YouTube. We're growing that right now, and that's been fun. New platform for me. Would love to have you guys there as well. Okay. Let's dive in, because this show really is all about those moments when we have to make a change, or when you have to grow, because I love growth and I love human potential. I think that's so important. So today's conversation is absolutely going to challenge you there. So, let's say maybe you need to make a change, but you're hesitating. Am I the only one who does that? Probably not. You think, you weigh the options, you wait, and then there comes a moment when you realize not choosing is a choice. Like, you've got to actually go and do something. Okay, but how do you make such a life-altering decision when you can't possibly know what's on the other side? Well, we all kind of face these crossroads, and how we respond determines really the direction of our lives. Maybe you have a few of those moments in your life you can think back on. A couple just popped in my mind where you made a choice and you went in some different directions, right? And that changed the course of your life. All right. Well, our guest knows this tension all too well. He spent over 20 years in ministry as a Protestant pastor before making the life-changing decision to follow his conviction and enter the Catholic Church, knowing it would cost him his career and some community. We're going to talk about all of that. Today, he's a Catholic speaker, author, and the founder of Down to Earth Ministry, where he helps others discover the truth, beauty, and depth of faith. And in this conversation, we're going to explore what it takes to walk away from something familiar, and how to discern when it's time to take the leap, and why courage is the bridge between you, who you are now, and who you're becoming. This is live right here, right? That's what happens. Our guest is Keith Nestor. Keith, welcome to the live. I'm so grateful that you're here. I've been looking forward to this.
Hey, it's good to be with you, Eric. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to have you on and have this conversation. I've been thinking about this whole thing, because we're going to get into kind of, I know some of your story. I know some of it, but we're going to share a little bit of it. But this whole thing of people like you who started maybe as evangelical, becoming Roman Catholic, it's becoming a bigger deal, isn't it? I've seen a lot, certainly on places like Twitter, more, I think because I followed you, I'm seeing a lot more now. Twitter showed me a lot of those, but I can go back. I was realizing even back in my college days, there was a professor that made the same transition. I was so fascinated then. Is it becoming a bigger deal?
It is. It's like every time you turn around, there's somebody becoming Catholic. And I know, my algorithm certainly tends that way too, but I also know people in my own life who have been feeling drawn toward that, and for one reason or another. And it just seems like every time you turn around, somebody else is on that journey.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get into why that is for you, but what do you think is going on? What do you think is the draw there?
Well, I think there are a lot of things, but I think one of the things is people are recognizing the need for their faith to be bigger than their own ideas. And I think sometimes in evangelical Christianity, you can be so self-focused. Like you realize that so much of what you're doing hinges on yourself, right? Your own opinions, what kind of worship you like, what you think about theology, who you like to listen to, what style of preacher do you like to follow, what kind of music do you listen to, what's your social status, all these things. And there's nothing wrong with any of those things. But I think what can happen is people are starting to recognize that, hey, you know what? I don't get to create my own version of Christianity. Like Christianity is something that has been passed down to me And I think in our good desire to be relevant and to connect to people's real lives, I think the evangelical world has thrown the baby out with the bathwater at times and made it so much about the individual person.
Yeah.
And I think people are recognizing the hollowness of that.
Yeah, it is a little astounding. So I have a theological education, and so but sometimes when you study church history, though, if you don't have that, people act like the church just started in the 1500s at the Reformation instead of the rich history that we actually have, right? Like it goes back much further. And when you start to get open to those things, you have some questions, don't you? Like you start to have different questions.
100%. And not even just the Reformation. I mean, the Reformation is certainly a pivotal point in the history of Christianity. But a lot of what people are experiencing today in modern evangelical culture, that's completely foreign to the Reformation. I mean, there's some theological ideas that come from there.
Right.
But if you think that Martin Luther, John Calvin, Erwin Zwingli, these guys would feel at home in a modern day evangelical megachurch,
no,
you're crazy. Like they would be going crazy if they saw what was going on in some of this stuff.
Oh yeah, I'm tempted to go on my rant about smoke machines, but we'll just forego that for the moment. That's a whole different episode probably. Okay, so I know that you've shared your story in lots of places. And so people can find it, guys. If you want to know more about Keith, you can do that. But I want to hear a little bit, and particularly I want to get to the moment where you knew that that you were going to make this change, because I think that takes so much. But I'm a spiritual formation guy, right? So I want to, I kind of want to hear a lot of the story. So like you grew up Protestant, is that right? And I think you said you gave your life to Christ at like 11. Your dad was a pastor?
So my dad is a retired pastor. So I was a preacher's kid growing up.
Okay.
And so to me, church was just, like the air that you breathe.
You were always there. It was one of those.
I was always
there.
You
were a church kid. Yeah, that's kind of how that goes.
Yeah.
So for you, the gospel was just Jesus died on the cross for your sins, sort of the standard.
Yeah.
What was that like when you were a kid?
So, I heard that I grew up Methodist, so mainline evangelical. I wouldn't even say mainline evangelical. It wasn't very evangelical.
Okay.
But just mainline denominational Christianity, but it was good. It was okay. But when I was growing up, the Methodist church wasn't so wacky that it is like today. Okay. It was just pretty much like normal Christianity as far as I was concerned.
Right.
I heard the gospel at church camp, and of course the version of the gospel that I heard was the standard version. We're all sinners. We can't do anything to earn our salvation. And because of our sin, we are destined for hell. Jesus Christ became a man, or God became a man in Jesus Christ. He lived the perfect life, died on the cross, rose again on the third day. And if we accept him and give our heart to Jesus, then no matter what we've done, we'll be forgiven. No matter what we do, we'll be forgiven. And God gives us his righteousness and he takes our sin. And now, we're good to go, and then the rest of your life you spend trying to live a life that's honoring to God and tell more people about Jesus and live a life of a Christian out of a sense of gratitude of what God has done for you. Pretty basic stuff. The Bible is your rule of life. That's it. Like the Bible is the authority of your life. And that's that.
And did you ever once talk about your hermeneutic for reading the Bible?
No,
that time? Right.
Never. There was never really, like when I was young, when I was young, there was never really a recognition that there were multiple hermeneutics. Like if you just said, what do you mean? What's your hermeneutic? I just said, you just open the Bible and read it,
Yeah.
How hard can that be? Right. We have this Bible given to us. Who can't read it? So we had really no way to deal with, I was probably like in, maybe like my later high school years when I started to recognize some of the differences theologically in Christianity, like the different version. But the way that it was always put to me was like, it was sort of matters that were optional, non-essential, the things that we really needed to know, we all agreed on. But
Right.
the other stuff that wasn't as clear, it didn't really matter where you came down. It was sort of like, what kind of flavor ice cream do you like? So to me, that was sort of how I looked at that stuff, but I didn't recognize it as a different hermeneutic. I just recognized it as, a different way you could read a certain
Right.
passage of scripture.
Yeah, I asked that because I agree. Like I grew up in also very similar kind of evangelical atmosphere, and we had really only two practices, right? Read your Bible and pray, but nobody would ever really tell you how to do either of those things, right? Like it was kind of, it should just be self-explanatory. It's not really.
Yeah.
So that was definitely a thing, and it shapes you in a certain way, right? So so your dad was a pastor. Did you always feel a call to ministry, or
not really. Like
okay.
I never really thought I was going to do that. I was a musician, I wanted to play music, and
you're a drummer, right?
I'm a drummer. Yeah. So to me, that was my focus. That's all I cared about. And I never really I never imagined myself doing any kind of ministry. Not at all. I mean, I was a church camp counselor for my high school years, and I loved that. So I loved all that, but I never thought of that as like a career path or something that I would do beyond anything more than just, hey, I'm a guy that goes to church. I'll tell people about Jesus and live a good Christian life, which I really wanted to do. I mean, I really wanted to do that, but ministry was something that came for me sort of in a real moment of my life where God had gotten a hold of me. I started going I was in Philadelphia playing drums in a band. While I was out there, I started going to this Calvary Chapel, which is like a Bible church. It's like a Bible verse by verse kind of expositional church. And I loved that. That was the first time I would say I really fell in love with being in church, because even when I was growing up, I wasn't always in church. Like I never thought church was that important. If you read your Bible, if you love Jesus, the church isn't a building, right? So, but I loved going to Calvary Chapel. Like I connected with the Bible readings and the long sermons, the contemporary worship. Like that just, man, it just created this powerful response in me. And in that environment is where I felt like I need to rededicate my life to Christ. And through that, I felt a call to just say, Lord, whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. And then it was an opportunity to go into ministry. Right after that, I thought, well, this is God. So that's what I ended up doing.
Yeah. So, and you became a youth pastor?
Yeah. I became a youth pastor. I was young. I was like 20 years old, I felt old at the time, but I was really young. Looking back on it now, I was like super young, but I became a youth pastor, moved back to Iowa, and went to work in this little Methodist church in the Quad Cities, and and started that.
Did you grow up in Iowa or no?
Yeah.
You did too. Okay.
I did. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. You grew up there. Your wife was not from there. Is that right?
Right. Yeah. You and I went to the same high school.
We did. We went to the same high school.
Well, you said you went to Des Moines East. I went to East my freshman year of high school before we moved to Council
right.
Bluffs.
I forgot about that.
My sister graduated from there.
What year were you there?
1989, 90.
Okay, yeah, so you were there just like right before me, like 91.
Yeah.
I think was when I got. Wow, that's amazing. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so we go way back, maybe.
Yeah, man.
Same part of town, right? Okay.
Oh yeah.
So I love that. That's so great. So a lot of those things are good. So I'm curious about then, when did you start to get? Because I think in one of your bios it says like it was like a 20-year decision, right? It was kind of an exploring thing that you did. So what was the first time you had an inkling, and then let's move up to like when you actually had to make that choice, and let's start talking about some of those kinds of things.
So I mean, Catholicism was the farthest thing from my radar, even as a Christian. Like even in ministry, the only Catholics I knew were like people that were leaving their church to come to my church.
Did you think they were Christians?
I didn't really think they were. I didn't. If they were, they were just like, I don't know, maybe in some weird way, but they certainly weren't what I was.
Right.
And every time I turned around, there was some new person joining our church, excited about it, saying, "Oh man, I hear the gospel." Like my wife was raised, Catholic. You know, she went to Catholic school. I'll pretty much say that. Knew nothing about the faith. So she came with me to Calvary Chapel and got saved there. So like I had a very low view of Catholicism.
Yeah.
And I knew enough about it to make me dangerous, like in terms of like telling people about it. Oh, you don't want to be Catholic. They worship statues and they think the Pope is perfect and they think you can earn your way to heaven. And, the Pope's going to be the Antichrist someday. I mean, all the kind of the trope stuff that you hear about it. That's sort of where I was. And then I met this guy who was a graphic designer that I was going to work with for some stuff with my church. And he was like super hardcore Catholic. And he was about my age. And we started getting together and talking about stuff. And this guy was like blowing my mind because he knew about the Catholic faith. And I mean, he was basically like an apologist almost for Catholicism. And I'd never met anybody like that before. And he knew the Bible backwards and forwards. So he was quoting all these scriptures to me. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. That's my world. What are you doing? You're a Catholic. You don't know anything about the Bible. Then he'd be like, all right, well, let's open up this verse. And he'd point me to verses that I had no explanation for that talked about Catholic stuff. And I'd be like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And so him and I became friends. And we sort of like, what happened was all of the really like low hanging fruit objections started to get knocked down pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And then I started to like look deeper into it. But that was a long time ago, man. That was like back in 2002, 2001, 2002, okay. Like where all that stuff was starting to happen to me. And I almost converted, man. I felt like I went on a pilgrimage to Rome. I did all this stuff with these Catholic guys and I was really falling in love with the Catholic Church. But, I was a youth pastor with, we started with 12 kids. We had 300 kids in our youth group, man. Things were blowing up. I had a family. I had 3 kids. I was like, what am I going to do? I can't become Catholic. What am I supposed to do?
Right.
So I totally like wigged out,
Yeah. Okay. I want to talk about that because let's drill into that because that's one of those things I think is so astounding is your livelihood really depended on you not being Catholic, right? Like,
yeah.
So you're exploring this. Is this causing you concern? Is it like, is it a barrier for you or you're like, how did God reach you past it through it?
Well, a lot of tough stuff, man. I mean, so like, yeah, what happened was G.K. Chesterton has a quote where he says, "Those who become fair to Catholicism soon become fond of it." And I had started to become fair to it. I had been around Catholics enough to see, okay, I can't say these guys aren't Christians. I can't say they don't know their Bible. I can't say they don't have a real relationship with Jesus. So I'm going to like try to understand what the Catholic Church actually does and is and teaches. And when I started doing that, I was like enchanted by it. It was so beautiful. It was so powerful. And they had so many answers to questions that I had never been able to find good answers to. And it just made sense to me.
Wait, like what?
Well, like, for example, how do you make sense of when Jesus talks about settling disputes and taking them to the church? In his environment, what did that mean? And what does it mean for us? Because one of the things that I was seeing as a, youth pastor, whatever, was whenever there were Christians who would disagree about something, they would just split apart and go start their own church or go to a different church. Nobody ever really settled anything, Eric. Everyone just continued to split apart. And that wasn't at all what I saw in the Bible at all. I saw a church with authority. I saw decisions being made by this group of men that were applied to everybody. And I always wondered, like, well, what does that look like today? So that was probably one of the things that I really wrestled with. Another one was the foundational questions of, well, okay, we love the Bible, we believe the Bible, but where did the Bible come from? How did we get this Bible? And by what authority did someone say these are the books that belong in it? That was a tough question that I wrestled with often because I was trying to, I was always arguing for things out of the Bible and that the Bible taught.
Yeah.
But I never really had a good answer to say, well, why is my version of what I think the Bible means the right version? And where does this authority even come from? So those would be two examples.
Those are good ones.
I'm sure there are others, but the Catholic Church had all of this history of dealing with things and the way that they understood themselves as the church. Like, I never understood the evangelical concept of what the church is, this invisible body of believers that has no visible head on earth, that consists of a group of people that nobody can say who is really a part of it and who's not. No one can say who's in charge of it, and there's zero universality in it. Like, to me, that was always like, okay, when people would throw around concepts like, well, in the church, we're going to do this. Like, that was always very squishy to me. And yet I saw in Catholicism that it wasn't squishy at all. It was very, very, defined.
Yeah.
So I was seeing these things, and I was seeing this also. The other thing I was seeing, you're a spiritual formation guy. I was seeing an incredible depth of personal devotion and prayer and the lives of the saints and these men and women who devoted themselves to the Lord, like these great saints. And I'm like, we don't have anything like that.
Right. Right.
So anyway, that's the stuff I was seeing that was really drawing me in. But then, like, you mentioned, I had this everyday reality of, this is my life. What am I going to do? And I just like freaked out and like ran away from it,
Yeah. Okay. I want to get into that. Totally. So my experience was kind of similar where, we had, like I said, we had read the Bible and pray. So I often say I went to college to learn to read the Bible, got a degree in biblical studies, and I learned all those things about where it comes from and, textual criticism and all these things and all the documents and ones that are held in Rome and all these other places. And that really did shape my faith. Like, I can see that how now that completely shapes how I read scripture. And then I went to seminary, and I went to seminary to learn how to pray. Right. So I did spiritual formation, but a lot of what that is studying a lot of dead saints and doing a lot of spiritual direction, which is, none of those are evangelical because they didn't exist. Right. We don't do that. We don't have those practices. So it was actually, I don't know if you know about the one out here, Sacred Heart Jesuit Retreat Center. Have you ever been there? I don't know.
I've never been there. No.
Beautiful silent retreat center.
Yeah.
I started going there, but so that's where I got that kind of introduction to some of those same concepts, right? Like, oh, there's actually more here than I thought. Okay. So you're running from it. You said I'm running from, like, okay, this is hard and it's freaky. And you've kind of staked your life already on this one, not just like your physical, but like your livelihood, right? Is all kind of staked up.
Everything was wrapped up in that 100%. Yeah.
So how'd you get out of it?
Well, it took a long time because what happened was the first time that I really felt called to it, and then I didn't do it, right? Life got kind of dark for me after that. And I took a couple of years away from ministry and focused on just my own life, my family life, different things. And getting back into ministry a few years later, I had a different perspective. My perspective was not about trying to be like this big rock star youth pastor with a giant youth group. It was just trying to be like faithful in my family and faithful in my personal walk, and not worrying about, because kind of the parallel thing that was going on in my life at the time, my youth ministry was growing like crazy. And I got caught up in that, man. I got caught up in the world of trying to be a rock star mega pastor guy. And that did not end well for me. So when I went back into ministry after a couple of years away from it, I didn't want anything to do with anything like that. I wanted to just like go and serve a little church and not care about anything. And I did that. I worked at a little evangelical free church that had 30 people in it. And I was their interim pastor part-time. And I loved every second of it, man. It was so awesome because there was no pressure of, all right, how are we going to be like this big thing? It was like this little group of people. And I remember telling them, I said, here's what we're going to do. Here's our big church growth philosophy. We're going to study the Bible and be nice to each other. That was it.
And good, right.
It was great. It was great. Well, then eventually after a couple of years of that, I got, I needed to actually make money. So I got hired by another bigger church to go work as like an associate of youth and mission there. So I was like a preacher on the main church. I was doing all this other stuff. And that was a Methodist church. And I loved it, but the denomination back then was just going crazy and about to split apart again. And it was in that environment where I was really like, okay, I need to develop my understanding of theology a little bit more and argue against this stream of liberalism that I saw creeping into our church that was going to destroy our denomination. And when I saw the way it was going, it churned up all of these questions about authority and about tradition and about God's plan for the church again. And that's what sort of led me to re-examine Catholicism again, because I recognized that, like, okay, the answer is not another, because all the conservatives at our denomination were like, oh, we're just going to go start another denomination. Right. And I'm like, that is the last thing we need right now. We don't need another denomination. We need to like restore. We need to get on board with like what Christ was doing, not create something new. And that really like led me back into a understanding of the Catholic Church with a mindset that was a little bit different. I no longer cared about my life anymore. I no longer cared about, I mean, I cared about my family, obviously, but I wasn't like, okay, you know, what's going to happen to me? I got to a point where it was like, Jesus was showing me, look, you need to just follow me and trust me, and your life, you know, doesn't matter. I mean, it's kind of like the gospel, you know, whoever seeks to save his life would lose it. Whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. I was really running into that in real time. And I got to a point where I recognized that I believed the Catholic Church was the church that was founded by Christ. I believed everything that the church taught. I believed that was true. Then it just got to a point of whether or not I was going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And that took some time for me to get there, but eventually I ran out of rope, man. It was a question of, I'm either going to become Catholic or I can't be a Christian anymore, because this is what God's calling me to do. And I have to be obedient to him. And I can't just, you know, try to like work Catholicism into my life anymore. I have to like let everything go and jump into this, because that's what I believed was the fullness of the truth.
Yeah. That's fascinating. So it sounds like you had a dark night of the soul. Your ministry kind of, you were doing great, and then that, it sounds like it crashed out. You didn't explain. That's okay. And then and that's where you kind of had to, you lost, what's the word I want to use? I don't want to say you lost some of yourself, but you maybe lost some pride. Is that true? And then you came to a place where you could be in
here's
submission
the thing,
to something
Eric.
else.
In that, and you can call it dark night of the soul all you want. You can call it a self-imposed, you know, complete destruction of oneself. I mean, it was bad. I didn't just lose some of my pride. I lost everything, man.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, okay, I'm done. You know, I am burned out. I'm a miserable, wretched sinner, you know, and I'm going to go away forever. You know, I don't want to be here anymore. And God really brought me back from that, you know, and then it was sort of like, okay, I don't matter. He only matters, you know. Yeah. And I had to be broken before I could be put back together. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's what God really did in my life.
I love that. Okay, so going into the church is like going to the Marines. That's what I just heard. That's what I heard you say.
Yeah, you got to be completely broken down. But, you know, here's the thing. I had to be completely broken down before I could follow him in that, because before in my life, I was still like trying to do my thing, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that what happens is you get to a point in your life where God really wants you, just like those people who encounter Christ, you know, the rich young ruler or the different people who said, hey, I want to follow you. What's it going to take? Basically, Jesus says everything.
Right.
And then you have the choice to make. Are you going to let go of everything to follow him? He never tells anybody, oh yeah, you can do what you want and follow me.
Yeah.
He doesn't say to that. He doesn't say that to anybody. It's always an all or nothing proposition. To follow Jesus always means that. So what people have to realize is this is not an advanced version of Christianity. This is the baseline.
Yeah. But
we have in our mega church mindset, no offense, people go to mega churches, but in this self-obsessed version of Christianity that we live in here in America, we've created this scenario where we're so important that God exists for us and to give us what we want. And so that when he calls us to lay it all down for him, we go, whoa, really?
Yeah, right.
And then you go, yeah, that's the way he's always been. You
Yeah.
know,
And
I just haven't really been tuned into that.
right. And then we act like God's not holding up his end of the bargain, right? When it's really
Right.
us that's not holding up our end of the bargain or what we've been asked to do. 100%.
Exactly. And for me, what that looked like was following him into the Catholic Church, because I was like, okay, I believe that's true. Are you going to do it? You know?
Yeah. Okay. So you make that choice. But can you take us into was there a moment, or was there was it just
Yeah, there was a
gradual and it
moment.
dawned on you? What happened?
All right. I'm going to tell you the story. Does my camera look out of focus to you, by the way?
It looks okay, I think.
It looks a little out of focus to me. Let me do one thing. I know we're live, but
We're live. It's okay. It's all right.
They'll understand. Hold on a second here.
I think they'll appreciate it.
Yeah. Let's see here if that is going to work better. It says that it's focusing, but I can't quite tell. But then again, I'm an old blind man. Does it look good? Does it look okay?
It looks great.
Okay. It was a Tuesday morning. This is going to sound a real dramatic story here. Okay. I woke up. I had the day off from my jobs. Okay. Because I was working in ministry, and my wife and I ran a photography business. Okay. I had agreed to meet a friend of mine, a Catholic friend of mine, for dinner that night in Iowa City. I'm in Cedar Rapids. He's in Davenport. Iowa City's in the middle. Before I show up that morning, I'm doing my own personal devotional time. And I feel like the Lord is impressing something on my heart. I know that sounds really like goofy or whatever, but it's true.
Did you believe in that before then?
100%.
Oh, you did? Okay. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Not everybody does. So I'm like,
yeah,
you know.
Like God was talking to me, man. He was telling me things, and this name kept ringing in my ears and my heart. It was the name Steve Ray. Steve Ray, Steve Ray, Steve Ray. I'm like, what does that mean? Who is Steve Ray? And I remembered, wait a minute. Steve Ray is a guy who was a Baptist who became a Catholic, and I'd watched a couple of his videos. He's a convert, but I didn't know him. I just knew that I'd watched a couple of his videos, and he was like really awesome. But I just felt like the Lord was saying, you need to talk to Steve Ray. You need to talk to Steve Ray. And I'm like, oh, I don't know how to get a hold of Steve Ray. I don't even know where he lives. I think he lived in Michigan or something like that. But I don't know anybody that knows him. I don't know him nothing. But all day long, that's just rolling around in my brain. Steve Ray, Steve Ray, Steve Ray. I get to this restaurant at 4:30 in the afternoon or whatever in Iowa City to meet my buddy, which is really early to meet for dinner. I don't know why we decided to go that early. He walks in. Before he sits down, his phone goes off. And he says, oh, it's for you, Keith. It's his wife, Sandy, sent him a text message. Tell Keith Steve Ray is in town tonight, and he's giving a talk at a church, and you guys need to go. And I'm like, what did you just say to me? Right?
Yeah.
I'm like, this is amazing. We have to go. And Greg's like, who is Steve Ray? I'm like, oh, he's this guy. He's like, okay. So I call my wife. I'm like, hey, I got to go to this thing. It's this, whatever. I told her. She's like, okay. So we drive like 45 minutes to Silvis, Illinois, to Our Lady Guadalupe Church, where Steve is going to give this talk. And when we get there, people are getting ready to have mass, and the place is packed. And, when you're not Catholic, you can go up to communion, but you put your arms across your chest to receive a blessing. You don't receive communion. Okay.
Okay.
So I went up to get my blessing, and I'm just like in knots, because up until that time, there had been probably about a year of me really thinking about Catholicism and really like going, okay, can I do this? Can I do this? Feeling drawn back into it, but still not sure what to do, because I was really like wrestling with this, and I kept saying to the Lord, I'll become Catholic if you want me to become Catholic, but what am I supposed to do? Like, you got to make a way, you got to show me what to do. Right. So I go up to get my blessing, and there's this big wood crucifix right above the altar where you go and you receive communion. It's like right above you. And so I got my blessing, and I took a couple steps to the right, and I knelt down, and I looked up at the crucifix, and I started praying, Eric. And I was like, Jesus, if you want me to become Catholic, I will do it, but you've got to make a way, because I don't know what to do. You've got to make a way. And just as loudly in my mind as I heard him speak to me that morning, Steve Ray, I heard him 10 times louder from the crucifix. And he spoke to me, and he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. You don't need me to make a way. You just need me. You just need me. And I realized at that moment, right, he's really there in the Eucharist. The Catholic Church believes that the Eucharist is transformed into the physical body and blood of Jesus Christ. It's not just a symbol. It's not just a memorial meal. Like he's present there under the appearance of bread and wine. And I'm like recognizing he's here. And what I need is not the plan of how to do my life. I just need Jesus.
Yeah.
And if I give up everything and it all sucks, but I get Jesus, then I win. And that was the night, man. I'm like, that's the night. I went home. I told my wife, I said, I got to do this because I'm like, I just need him. I can't put these lines around my obedience and say, well, I'll do this, but only if you make it make sense to me. Because that's really what I was asking for, Eric. And I think a lot of people do that. Okay, God, I'll do this, but tell me what's going to happen. Tell me why. Tell me the how, all this. And Jesus doesn't do that. He just says, follow me.
Right.
That's the call in the gospel, isn't it? Whenever somebody comes to him, it's not complicated. He just says, follow me. He doesn't even tell them where he's going. He says the birds of the air have nests, foxes have holes. The Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Like, I don't even have a place to live, but follow me. That's what he says. And to me, that was the night that I knew that I knew what that meant. And it meant into the Catholic Church.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So I'm assuming, were you still pastoring at that time? Did you leave? What happened?
Yeah. The next day I went into my, senior pastor's office and I told him, I said, hey man, I had told him before I was kind of flirting with Catholicism and he thought that was ridiculous and stupid and never thought in a million years that I would do that because that would mean that I couldn't be hanging around with him and his church that he was in love with, and it was a good church. He's a good guy, but he kind of had this vibe about him that, hey, what we're doing here, man, there's nothing better. Yeah. And for me to be like, hey, I'm leaving there to go like, what? We were building a $10 million new building across town. I mean, we were getting ready to do all this great stuff. And I told him I was leaving, man. And we kind of talked about that a little bit. Like, I told him I wanted to become Catholic. And it was funny because I was meeting with this priest at the time. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do for a job. I don't know what this, I don't know what that. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And it was funny. This priest said to me, he's like, well, you don't have to quit your job. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm a pastor at a church. He goes, well, you can go do that. Just come to mass, fulfill your obligations as a Catholic. You can go work in another church. He's like, everybody's got to go to work somewhere. And if your job is going to work in a church, he goes, why don't you go ask him about that? And I think he kind of knew. So I did. I went to my pastor. I went to my little committee of our people. I said, hey, here's the deal. I'm going to become Catholic. If you still want me to work here, I will. But I can never take communion here again. I'm only going to teach things that are consistent with the Catholic faith, and I need to go to mass on the weekends, but I could do that Sunday night or Saturday night, whatever. Are you guys cool with that? And they were like, are you crazy? They're like, you can't be a Catholic and work here. And I remember I was like, I can't remember who I said it to, but I said it to somebody. I'm like, it's funny. As a Methodist, I could probably marry my cat, and you guys would think that was great. But if I'm a Catholic, there's no way,
But not that. Anything but that.
Pretty much like, okay, but there was one guy in that committee who I feel like he had the words of wisdom. And he said to me, he goes, Keith, he said, here's the deal. If God's calling you to become Catholic, you need to be all in. He goes, being here with us, he goes, it might take away one of your worries as far as like your income. He goes, but you are not going to be fully able to jump into the Catholic faith if you still work here. And if that's what God's calling you to do, you need to just be all in. And I said to that guy that night, I said, you know what? You're 100% right. And that's what we decided to do.
I agree. I think that's wisdom, right? Like and it's good when you have somebody who can actually give that to you with honesty rather than anger or all kinds of other things that could have happened.
Nobody was angry. Everybody, there was sadness and there was concern, but nobody was angry. Like they loved me. They were good people and I love them. They're still good people. I love those people today.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Keith, thanks for sharing all that. I really think that's such a fascinating story. I think the way that's going, the way that you wrestled through all of it is just, you see God all over it, right? You can see that he was moving you there, and it's just always enjoyable for me to hear that, even though I'm sure it wasn't comfortable for you at the time.
Oh no, Yeah.
So maybe we covered this, but I was curious what you learned about yourself through all of that.
Well, I think what I learned about myself is that I am the least important person in all of this, and that's a great lesson to learn, because when you think that you're so important, that everything hinges on what you do, and that you're so needed, and that you're so, the center of everything, it makes it really hard for you to give up everything to follow Jesus.
Yeah.
And becoming Catholic will teach you faster than anything that you really don't matter that much. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean it like from the standpoint that nobody's going to bend over backwards for you. No one's going to hold your hand. No one's going to treat you like a little baby and coddle you and make things easy for you because you're a special little snowflake.
Yeah.
They're going to say to you, look, this is the fullness of the truth. You're invited into it, but you come to Catholicism on Catholicism's terms. It doesn't conform itself to you like so many churches do today. So many people are looking for churches that will conform to them. And they walk in and they look, where do I fit in the best? What's most like what I think? What fits my opinions? And what do I get out of it? And what feeds me? And all of that. And what that creates are spiritual toddlers that throw temper tantrums when they don't get their way. And you can't pull that crap in the Catholic Church, Eric. Yeah. You show up and it's like, this is what we do. This is what we've been doing for 2,000 years. You want to be a part of it? This is how it goes.
Yeah.
It's like,
Preach.
You don't get to go, well, wait a minute. It's like if you go over to somebody's house and they, their rule is you take your shoes off when you walk in, you don't get to go, but I don't want to take my shoes off,
Yeah.
You do it according to their way. It's not your way. And so that was the lesson I learned was I'm not the most important person in this thing. And that was so liberating.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So I want to reframe that a little bit, and you kind of did. So I appreciate that, but
yeah,
because it isn't that you're unimportant. And so one of my hobby horses about, growing up as an evangelical is, yeah. So you're right. Yeah. We do kind of cater to everybody, thus the fog machines. Right. And that there's a sense in which there's an inflated self-importance of babies and very immature people. But I also think the way we talk about the human person, I don't like. Right. And so I think what you're saying, yes, you're not the focus, right? You're not the focus of a Catholic mass, right? You just aren't. It's Jesus, and it's been put there, and it's been done that way for thousands of years. And there's a history to it. So you're entering into something, not trying to decide, oh, what am I going to get out of it? Right?
Exactly.
So maybe you'll get something out of it. Maybe you won't.
You will get something out of it. There's no question about it.
Sure.
But that's the key. Yeah.
Maybe, but you don't know what it is, and maybe it's different weeks or whatever, but you're still entering into something. It's more of an invitation than it is to join versus like an expectation of a entertainment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. Okay. It is one of my hobby horses. Cause I think we diminish some of our language sometimes. I'm not saying you did this, but I get skittish about it. Diminishes the value of the human person, right? Like I think it's you're so important, right? You're because we can talk about this, what God did with all that, but I want to say to our listeners, you like matter. You need to be on board with God's program for your life, but He created you and wants that for you for a reason, right? And so maybe it's big things, maybe it's just faithfully doing a job, but that serves and ministers to people, and it can be a tremendous witness, a tremendous blessing to many. So,
when I'm talking about that, I don't mean like you're not important from the sense of like your human dignity.
Right.
I mean from the standpoint of you don't show up to the Catholic Church and you don't have the right to impose yourself on it. You receive it.
Right.
And what you learn is that's the absolute best thing for you. Because when we try to create some sort of Christian experience around ourselves, we're changing like the wind. Mm-hmm. And what we wind up with is something that's only as deep as where we can go, is only as wise as what we can conceive,
Yeah.
and is only as effective as we are. But when you become part of something infinitely bigger than you, now you get to absorb and receive all of that. And it really makes you grow in powerful ways.
100%. Yeah. I love that. And I think that's true. So like, again, I didn't think you were saying that, but it's one of my hobby horses. So
It's funny though, Eric, because it's interesting. Sometimes when I talk to people who come to Catholic church, they come to a mass, they're not Catholic, they're evangelicals or whatever, they're this and that, and they go to a mass, they almost have this visceral reaction to the fact that they're not viewed as the center.
Right.
Because we're so used to that in church. Like they show up, they're like, well, where do I park? Oh, down the street, and they walk in, they don't know where to go. They don't know what's going on. Someone might greet them and just say, hey, glad to have you here. But like, they don't know, like no one is making a big deal out of the fact that they're there.
Right. Yeah.
And they're just like, wait a second, I'm the visitor. I'm the most important person in the world.
You should care about me.
Everyone should be excited that I'm here, and people are like, hey, it's great, but we're praying, like,
right. Yeah, that's true.
Anyway,
would you turn the mass back around, like, so they're facing the front?
I go to a Latin mass, and that's how it is anyway.
They do that? Okay, interesting.
Yeah, absolutely, I would. 100%, I would. What's that?
Because that sends that message, right? Because then not even the officiant is facing you, like it's.
Well, yeah, but that's not the reason why that isn't because he's saying that you're not important. He's saying that we're all going in the same direction.
Okay, yeah.
So when the priest has his back to the people, it's not because the people aren't important. It's because he's leading the people toward Christ.
Interesting.
He's facing God in that on part of the people. It's kind of like this. If you're on an airplane, do you want your pilot facing you or do you want your pilot facing where we're going?
Yes, please.
Right?
Yep.
So the priest now part of even in the Latin mass, in part of the mass, he turns around and faces the people when he's talking to the people. So when he's giving his homily or when he is saying things to the people, but he's leading the people in their act of worship. And so we're all facing in the same direction. So to me, that's why for, almost 2,000 years, it was always done that way. It didn't change. That part didn't change until 1970.
Right. Yeah. That's pretty big deal. Okay. I want to ask you one more question. That actually kind of, I guess, leads into another question.
Sure.
Which I'm curious because I heard you talk about this, and this is going to be the struggle that a lot of evangelicals are going to have with this, but they're going to be mostly theological issues, right? I heard you talk about particularly the doctrines around Mary, where some of your hangups. How did you resolve some of those kinds of things? So maybe that goes with you don't get to say because there's a body of work, or what? How did you kind of resolve it in your own mind?
Well, yeah. So for me, a lot of it had to do with seeing the scriptural foundations for those things. So because of course, every good evangelical, I was the guy that was going, where's that in the Bible?
Right.
Well, when you start to find some of these things in the Bible, then you go, oh, wait a minute. Okay. I never really understood that before. I never really paid attention to that before. So when you find the scriptural foundations for these things, that's a huge eye opener, right? And then the other thing about it is understanding that these beliefs that are held by the Catholic Church go all the way back to the time of the apostles. These weren't new things that were invented. They might have been formalized or defined, but they weren't invented. They were received. So the question the foundational question that you have to ask, you shift it from, well, when did the Catholics start believing, like, for example, that Mary never had any other kids, that she was a perpetual virgin? When did the Catholics start believing that? Well, what you realize is you go, wait a second, hold on. That's not the right question. The question is, when did certain Protestants stop believing that? Right? When did people stop believing that? So like that one, for example, even the reformers believed that. And they were sola scriptura to the, Martin Luther, Bible alone, Bible alone. John Calvin absolutely said there's, the scriptures teach that. So to me, you go, wait a minute.
Where does
all
it
these
teach
things
that?
that what's that?
Where does it say that?
That Mary was a perpetual virgin?
Yeah.
Well, there's a couple places. First of all, when Gabriel greets Mary in Luke chapter 1, and he's telling her she's going to become pregnant, she says, "How can this be since I know not man?" The sense of that is an ultimate sense, not a, well, I just haven't yet.
Oh, okay.
It's a sense of,
Right.
I don't know man. And the reason, the way that the church has understood that was that she had taken a vow of virginity, as a lot of people did back then, when she was a young girl. She had taken this vow. The other one is there's a prophecy in Ezekiel, I think it's in chapter 44, maybe it's 42, where Ezekiel's given this vision of the new temple, and there's this gate that the presence of God enters through this gate, and then they say no one else can enter into that gate because God has come through it. It will be forever shut. And the church fathers applied that to the Blessed Virgin Mary.
Okay.
It said,
Right.
Christ came through the gate of Mary, no man shall enter it. So Saint Joseph would have been like, there's no way I'm having sex with her. She's the gate by which the Messiah came into the world. And then, of course, you look into John chapter 19. I think this is probably the easiest one to understand. When Jesus at the foot of when Mary's at the foot of the cross with the disciple John, he says, "Woman, behold your son. Son, behold your mother." And from that day, she was taken with John. Right. Now, if Jesus had other brothers and sisters, she would have gone with them.
Right.
Why does he give her to John the apostle? You know, that would have been failing to fulfill their religious duty to not take care of her. But he gives her to John, and the church has always understood that as being, because she was his only son, or he was her only son.
Yeah. Yeah. Because he was responsible. And so if he's going to be dead, then
yeah,
she's going to need taken care of. Yeah.
And people go, "Oh, wait a minute. What about the brothers of the Lord and all this kind of stuff?" And that we see his brothers and sisters. Well, the Greek word for that just simply means close relative. It doesn't necessarily mean blood, biological blood, brother and sister. It could be cousins. It could be anything, but it doesn't that Greek word doesn't necessarily mean that.
Yeah. That's where they were trying to take him away. And he's like,
yeah.
And he got him. Yeah. Okay. That's
so really, it's a combination of scripture, church tradition, and also the recognition of the authority of the church. So when you also recognize that, when you go, okay, for me, that was like the first thing I understood. And when you understand the church's authority, then you go, wait a minute. Okay, the church teaches this. I don't necessarily understand or agree with it. Who's wrong? Me or the church? Right. So there's that element of humility that comes into it, where even if you haven't figured it out, you go, all right, Holy Mother Church said this. I mean, St. Ignatius of Loyola is famous for saying, if the church says what is white is black, then I'll believe that it's black, because of its authority. And St. Augustine said, I wouldn't even know what the Gospels were if it weren't for the church, So there's that authority. So when you run into something that you don't understand, you go, okay, well, what does the church teach about this?
That's fascinating. Okay, so two things. One, I think you definitely had a shift in your hermeneutic there somewhere, right? Where you were going to read it according to how which we mentioned earlier. And then, which is why I asked the question, because I knew that was true. And then the other thing that I find interesting is that the authority thing was kind of your, like, the thing that you wanted to know about, right? That's that you really, I don't know what the word is, but kind of the crux for you. So I find that interesting. So personally, I'm gonna just ask you this. That's where I get hung up, actually. So like, I appreciate the tradition, but I'm not convinced that if we're thinking about authority, that we're actually talking about the kingdom of God as Jesus implemented it. Like, I start to have questions right there. So,
well, think about this. Don't think of authority as I'm telling you what to do. Yeah. Think of authority as I'm passing on what Christianity is. Okay.
Yeah.
So authority. Remember, Jesus said that the greatest among you must be your servant. The Catholic Church is not this like authoritative thing. Just believe us and do what we say. That's not the point. The point of the authority is a teaching authority. It's to say, look, right. I'm showing you what Christ taught the apostles and what they passed down. So it's that kind of it's a teaching authority. It's not like a power authority.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. Well, I'll put that in my metaphorical pipe and smoke it for a little while.
Definitely.
I love it. Keith, I really appreciate you sharing some of your story. And that was exactly what I wanted to hear from you.
My pleasure, Eric.
So I think you made this huge leap for yourself, and I think you gave us a great example and great conversation about why you did that. People can find you, like, probably YouTube is the best place. So YouTube at Keith Nestor, right? And people
and then my website is down2earthministry.org. So that's down the number 2 earthministry.org. But I'm pretty active on YouTube. If you just type me in, you'll find me.
I love it. What would you say to people who either are considering a change, they're maybe afraid, maybe it's a theological one, maybe it's something else they know that they should do? If you could just give us one piece of advice, what would you say?
To make a change?
Yeah, because you went through this whole process, right? You made a significant change that cost you, and you had to do that with courage. How would you? I
would say you have to just completely detach yourself from what you think you need on the other side of that change. If you know that the change that you're thinking about making is a good change to make, okay, but you're not sure what's on the other side of it, just remember this: whatever's on the other side of a good change is better than whatever you're in right now, even if the worst possible thing happens to you. Yeah. For example, so if you say, okay, well, I'm thinking about making a change with my health, with my diet, I'm going to start eating a certain way or whatever. I don't really know how I'm going to do that, but I make this change. Well, what if I do that and I hate it? Or what if I do that and, whatever. Well, that's better than what you're doing now, because there's something in you that's causing you to want to make that change. And if you quit listening to that voice within you that's calling you to that change, then whatever you have is what you're always going to have.
Yeah, you lose something, don't you?
Yeah, you do.
If you do that. Well, I love that. Thanks for the words of wisdom, Keith. I appreciate you being here. Friends, go find Keith on YouTube, Keith Nestor. You can find him there. Friends, thanks so much for watching this episode. I don't know what's going on in your life. I don't know what changes you need to make. I bet there's one. And I bet that whether it's a huge theological shift, like we talked about with Keith, or a job or something else, a relationship perhaps, do what you feel like God's calling you to do. I want to leave you with this, which I always do. Remember, you're only human, but humans do amazing things every single day. So go do something amazing. We'll catch you next time. See you guys.